this coming Sunday's Gospel from the Gospel of John, and it's the parable where Jesus talks about being the gate to the sheepfold, and referring to himself as the Good Shepherd. And I was thinking about how this could apply, how I could take it into my week. And I think Christ is asserting two things when he talks about himself being the Good Shepherd. I think he's showing our need for care and provision, but secondly also showing his willingness to provide that for us, because Christ wants us to know exactly who he is, that he's the Good Shepherd that will, provide and protect and care for our every needs before we even speak it. And I don't know how much you guys know about farming. Hand on heart, I don't know that much about farming, but I do know one thing. I know that the sheep recognise their shepherd's voice and they associate him with security, so they tend to go wherever he goes. And sometimes if the shepherd is leading the flock to go graze, he will walk in front and talk to the animals and even sing to them sometimes, so that the sheep recognise his voice and follow him. And the shepherd knows exactly what sheep he thinks are going to, drift and stray away. He knows which ones are likely to cause others to drift. And he knows the ones that he can depend on to be at his side all the time, because he knows each and every one of his sheep by name. He knows them inside out. And that is exactly the way that God sees us. He knows our biggest fears, our worries, our thoughts before we even speak them, the biggest dreams and desires of our hearts. He put them there. So he knows us inside out. But sometimes, the sheep can go off and get themselves into sticky situations. They can end up in swamps when they go off astray, in jaggy nettles amongst the thistles, and get themselves in a real pickle. And I think we can definitely do that too when we stop listening to God's voice. But no matter how far we stray, Christ is always there offering us another chance at abundant life. When I was little, I would go to my grand's house and she would have all these pictures of Jesus with this sheep on his shoulders. And I always really liked it, but didn't really know why. But now I really love it because something I didn't know back then was, that side of the sheep, the belly, the underside of the sheep that Jesus places on his shoulders, that would be the dirtiest part of the sheep. It would be where, when it was grazing, it would lie and it would get covered in muck and its hair would get all matted and tangled and there'd be bugs in it and all sorts of horrible stuff. But that's precisely the part that Jesus picks up and puts on his shoulders, because he's not afraid of our mess. He's not afraid of that dirt. He takes it upon himself and gladly wears that on him, because he's not afraid of our mess. He's not afraid that when we fall, he'll run the other direction or, be laughing at us. That's at precisely that moment that he runs to us and picks us back up and offers us a fresh start. And all we need to do really is to recognise his voice. And it's like anything, in order to listen to God's voice, we need to recognise that it's him that's speaking to us and not all these other voices that are there to prevent us from having that life to the full that the gospel speaks about. We need to be able to distinguish between God's voice and other voices that are there to lead us astray and prevent us from having that joy. And one way we can do that is by, it's like anything, spending time with the person that you want to get to know. In order to get to know someone, it's not enough to just hear about them, but you have to really encounter them. And we can do that through prayer, by talking to God. And the more that we have that just general conversation with God in prayer about our deepest thoughts and in our heart, the more we are then able to recognise God's voice when we speak to him, because we've spent that time with him. The scripture ends this Sunday with that Jesus said, I came to give you life and give it to the full. I might be paraphrasing that slightly, but to have life and have it to the full. And God, he invented life. He gave us life. So I think it's fair to say that we can go to Jesus to learn how to live our best lives, to learn how to have the total freedom and joy and to really live life to the full. So that is my 2 cents on this coming Sunday's Gospel. I hope it somehow inspires you, and I hope you guys have a good week. That is all from me. God bless.